Hi, everybody. Welcome to Valley Views, what you see and what you hear in the Coachella Valley. We have a very interesting show today. I'm sure many of you have been reading about Get Tested Coachella Valley. It's a 3-year, $5 million public health initiative. Really affects the Coachella Valley so much more than the rest of the country, which we will get into when we talk with David Brinkman, who is the CEO of the Desert AIDS Project. And we are going to talk to one of my favorite authors on the planet Earth. His name is Al Scheid, and he's written, just look at this book, Breaking Out of Beerport. That's a long kind of investment, a lot of years. But first we're going to start off with my favorite band. You'll hear me say that a few times, I'm sure. It's Arbuckle Road. So we have a lot of variety in our show today. Hope you can sit back, relax, and enjoy Valley Views. We'll be right back.
Desert Lexus wants to make 2015 the year you drive a new Lexus. That includes the exciting new 2015 NX crossover SUV or the performance-minded 2015 RC and RCF Coupe. Add our inventory of certified pre-owned vehicles, high level of customer service, and convenient Saturday service hours, and 2015 looks like the perfect year to drive a Lexus, making the most of every moment. Desert Lexus in the Cathedral City Auto Center or online at desertlexus.com.
I'm Bruce Valanche, and this is Charo, F. Veridad, and we're here to talk about Michael Childers' One Night Only.
Hola, this year we'll be back to the 60s. On April 22 at the McCallum Theatre, this magnificent extravaganza will entertain everyone with over 20 famoso singers, from the Beatles to the Baccarat.
From Dylan to the Doors, Charo will light your fire. This show benefits Jewish Family Service, so call now, 760-340-ARTS.
Call now.
This ad sponsored by Flooring Innovation.
I don't think there's any question that one of the reasons I'm crazy about this band is that my 3 guys who I love, worship, and adore are all in it. And this is, it's an encore piece. And we did it with Greg Vincent, and we'll be talking about Arbuckle Road. Here we go.
Baby, just a tune away. Well, many miles down the road, watching you here at my front door. Yes, I've traveled down there, the road all right.
Greg Vincent, I'm going to ask you as leader of the group, how did he get that name?
Well, Dan Spriggle, who I started the band with, has been in the coffee business for many years.
Okay.
And some way, somehow, I Googled Old Western vernacular and looked at coffee. And back in the 1800s, there was a brand of coffee called Arbuckle.
Really?
And it's kind of like today's Folgers. So one thing led to another, and it was A-R-B-U-C-K-L-E. And somehow I made it R and turned the R around and buckle and then added road, and that's how it happened.
I just love it.
You know what? There were so many bad names. It's like one more name. It's like, okay, go with that finally. So we had a show coming up. We had to be called something.
Yeah, absolutely. But I saw you at the Love and All Animals. And honest to goodness, I kind of waited around. We were taping, but I kind of waited around because I hadn't seen the band, and I followed these guys in their careers. And so I was sitting there, and it started, and I thought, where am I? I mean, I was just uplifted right into some stadium somewhere with this fabulous band up there doing
nice.
this amazing song. And so right away I did say to Michael, I would love to have a theme song, and I'd love for it to sound like that.
We will do that for you.
So I'd like to just go on record.
You got a deal.
Tell me who's in the band, because my guys are right there too.
Well, the Pedersen brothers, Mike and Larry Pedersen, are in the band. Bob Bingham plays bass in our band. Carl Agnello plays drums. Lindy Bingham, Bob's wife, she plays saxophone and sings. And Lisa Lynn Morgan sings with us. And last but not least is Larry's wife, Kat.
Oh,
Sings and does a
my
bunch
hero.
of the percussion, a lot of little shaky things and all
Yeah.
that stuff. So it's interesting that there's 5 or 6, 7 voices in the band. So I think Bob could even sing too, but I guess we run out of microphones. Maybe we need to find another one. we make sound people crazy when we show up. Yeah, we need 12 mics and all this stuff. And they're like, oh my. So anyway, it's sometimes a challenge, but it's really fun when they're all working together.
And how long have you been together?
Started the band 3 years ago. And it was one of those things where finally one day we'd had enough of talking about it, and a couple beers into it, it's like, all right, we're going to do it. And we started the band that day, myself and a kind of Dan Spriggle. And unfortunately, Dan couldn't kind of stay with us because he had some other commitments. So, you know, one thing led to another. Mike got involved and kind of legitimized us. We were a two-piece garage band at that point, and Mike came in and goes, oh man, that was his savior project for 2011 or whatever that was. So he legitimized us a little bit, got another guy involved and played some bass, and slowly but surely it just grew to 8 bodies and a big sound, and it's a lot of fun.
I love it.
Believer, will you leave me alone? It's a matter of time till you come back to me, begging and bleeding on your hands and knees. Matter of time until I hear you say, just a matter of time till you come back to me, begging and bleeding on your hands and knees. Matter of time.
How great is that? And Mike, Larry, and Gene all know that this band should be at Stagecoach. And so that's a discussion that will continue. Mike and Larry have been with the band some time, and Larry's better half, Kat, is in there too. And they just make it so great. If you ever get a chance to see them, please do that. And we will be right back.
Ever wonder about what he's doing? How it all turned to lies?
Do you really want to help a veteran come home?
The isolation is tough. Just lend an ear.
Anyone can do it.
Do more than just say thank you for your service.
Listen. Listen.
Listen.
Listen.
Listen.
Listen.
Listen.
Listen to a veteran.
A public service from the Welcome Johnny and Jane Home Project, pairing a veteran from any era with a non-veteran who will simply listen with respect and with their whole heart.
Listen to a veteran, please.
ListenToVeterans.org.
I am so happy to have David Brinkman here. He is the CEO of Desert AIDS Project, and he has a wonderful, wonderful plan for Get Tested Coachella Valley. And tell us why that is so important.
Well, Patty, it's so important because there's 250,000 people in our nation with this virus today, and they don't know it. And one of the reasons they don't know it is you can live for a decade, 14 years with this virus and show no symptoms. The federal government since 2008 has said every American over the age of 12 needs to get tested because it's a virus, just like a cold is a virus, and viruses don't discriminate. Anybody can get a virus.
Sure, sure. What was it that I read? Well, I think we talked about this. The prevalence of HIV here is so much greater, I think twice as great as the rest of the country.
Correct. Right. So the White House says just living in an area such as the Coachella Valley puts you at higher risk of getting HIV just because the prevalence rate in this valley is so much higher than it is other places in the nation.
Well, I also like, I was reading an article about you, and it said the H in HIV is for human.
Right. It's a human virus. Any human being can get this virus. All walks of life have this virus. And untreated, it leads to AIDS, which eventually then leads to death. And our whole goal is to ensure that every American at the end of the day knows their status so we can provide treatment to people who live with the virus. You know, treatment extends quality of life.
Yes.
It extends the length of life, but it also makes the patient 96% less infectious. And so treatment is also a prevention strategy, because once the patient or the individual is uninfectious, 96% less, then we quit having the virus move. Right now it moves every 9.5 minutes. It infects another person in this country.
How quickly?
Every 9.5 minutes. So in our conversation today, more than 1 or 2 people will be infected. And the number one reason it passes is because the carrier doesn't know they're a carrier. And when you don't know you're living with it, you're highly infectious because you're not being treated.
Well, you know what? I think that in my elderly age group, probably a lot of women don't give this any thought. But tell me what happened.
Sure. You know, in the 80s, right, 30 plus years ago, it was in just small pockets of the country and in subpopulations. And so older people were normally worried about their kids in the 80s. They weren't worried about themselves being at risk for this,
Yes.
right? But today, the virus has just spread into the general population. And so anybody can be at risk. What we're doing is just making the testing standard medical procedure. You know, when you go to the doctor and she or he checks all those boxes when they take your blood, the CDC wants your physician to check the HIV box too.
Okay.
Because it's no value judgment. There is no value judgment about if you have a virus, if you have a cold.
Yes.
Nobody's going to put a value judgment on that. And so we're routinizing it in hospitals and clinics around this region of California. One of the first new positives was an 86-year-old female.
Yeah.
And she would have never been identified had it not been routinized, because the reason her blood was drawn that day was not for symptoms related to HIV. That was not why her blood was drawn by her physician. But her physician checked that box, and sure enough, this individual now knows she's living with the virus, and she didn't know.
And good for that physician.
Yeah, right?
Absolutely.
No discrimination, just saying, hey, it's a virus. Anybody can get a virus, so we should all get tested.
The testing is a blood test?
There's a couple different ways to test it. But when we go for our annual physical into the doctor's office, our doctor usually pulls blood, right?
Right.
Does the blood work. And that's a real easy way to test at that time. But if the patient or an individual thinks that they'd like to know quickly for whatever reason, you can also do an oral test, which the results are done in 20 minutes.
Really?
Yeah. And so if for some reason somebody wanted to know in this moment, do I have this virus? You can, we have 41 sites in the Valley you can get tested at. But you can also go to a pharmacy such as Walgreens and just buy it over the counter these days.
No kidding.
Yeah, you can take it home. It's a little plastic test, a little plastic thing that looks like a popsicle stick.
Okay.
And it goes between your gums and your lips, and it's pulling cells out of your mouth. And it kind of has like a sandpaper on it. It just goes around once, and you put it in a little test tube, and you set your clock for 20 minutes, and it's completely accurate. It's 99.9% accurate.
That's amazing.
Yeah, isn't it?
I mean, truly.
Yeah, so you could do it at the doctor's with blood, or you can come to one of our sites or go to a drugstore and do it.
And so it's going well,
orally.
the program itself?
It's going really, really well. Our goal for the first year was to get our 3 big hospitals to start to routinize it, and then start to get, there's 900 licensed physicians in our valley, and to get them just to standardize it into their practice.
Yeah.
You know, if a physician asks you about your history, like have you been eating cheeseburgers and french fries, chances are if you're eating it every night, you're going to say, well, I eat it once a month, right? Well, it's the same thing if a physician wants to talk to you about your sexual history. There's a chance if there's something you don't want to disclose, you're going to downplay it. And so we found over time these interviews where doctors tried to assess if their patient was at risk wasn't really effective, because the patient wasn't going to possibly self-disclose everything they should be.
Yeah.
And so it's just easier just to say, we don't need to talk about it. I'm just testing all my patients.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Love it.
And so we've identified 61 new positives so far, just at our 41 sites at DAP. And then the hospitals and the clinics are just identifying new folks as well. And, you know, it means they get to have the quality of life back. They get to have a great length of life. and they become uninfectious when they're on medication. And so it's wonderful.
That is wonderful. That's wonderful. Thank you, David.
Sure.
You know, boy, you're a good speaker.
Oh, thank you, Patty.
Yeah, thanks so much. And all the best. And Valley Views will be back very soon.
Ralphie May, live in concert.
And Charles Barkley kind of freaks me out when I'm high, okay? It's like, key to winning the championship is penetration. You gotta have penetration when you want to win a championship. That's what they're doing right now. You see Dirk Nowitzki, he's driving the lane, getting deep penetration. Now, in my head, I'm hearing, key to winning the championship.
Saturday night, March 28th, the Spotlight 29 Casino Showroom. Tickets available at Spotlight 29 Casino box office or at spotlight29.com.
Desert Lexus wants to make 2015 the year you drive a new Lexus. That includes the exciting new 2015 NX crossover SUV or the performance-minded 2015 RC and RCF Coupe. Add our inventory of certified pre-owned vehicles, high level of customer service, and convenient Saturday service hours, and 2015 looks like the perfect year to drive a Lexus, making the most of every moment. Desert Lexus in the Cathedral City Auto Center or online at desertlexus.com.
This is a great book, Breaking Out of Beerport, a memoir by Al Scheid. And let me just tell you a little bit about him before we say hello. He had parallel careers as an investment banker, CEO, and entrepreneur. He was a founder and CEO of an investment banking group, 2 biotechnology research companies, and a wine producing company of which he is now chairman. He has done extensive speaking and writing on business topics, and it's very important that he tell you what I could have done if I had done a review of this book, because my husband fell in love with it, and then I did, and now everybody we know. And this is Al Scheid.
Thank you.
So good. Take us back, though.
Well, both my grandfathers were coal miners, and 2 of my uncles were coal miners. My father finished the 7th grade, and so you get an idea of where we're coming from here. It's a little coal mining town in eastern Ohio, coal mining steel mill town, where I grew up, and did all the usual things boys in those towns did. And a lot of unusual things boys in those towns didn't do as well, because I had the urge at a very young age to make money.
Yeah.
Because we didn't have any.
Good.
So the only way you had money, and if you were 10 or 12 years old, was to find a way to make it. And so that's what I did. Caddied, did that stuff like that. Eventually learned to shoot pool pretty well. Picked up a few bucks that way. Worked behind a milkshake stand, you know, dipping ice cream and building milkshakes and all that sort of thing. And that kind of got started. And eventually at 19, I hitchhiked out of town and went on a great adventure.
Wow.
Steel mills, tire factories, finally the U.S. Navy. And in the Navy, they sent me to a special school where I suddenly found out something I didn't know. I had a brain.
Oh!
I'd never known that. I'm dead serious.
Really?
Yep, that's where I found out.
That's interesting.
Yeah, and the Navy sent me to California. And I was lucky enough to land in Long Beach at Los Alamitos. Met some guys there because of the 26 people in my group. I was the only one without a college education except for my boss, the chief, who was what they call a Mustang in the Navy. He started out as a seaman and worked his way up.
Yeah.
And my friends decided I should go to college, and that's actually how I got an education. My buddies in the Navy pushed me into it.
Yeah, I remember that. I remember reading that. Yeah, yeah.
Had it not been for them. And I'm still very friendly with the 2 who did it. They're both still alive. And we're still in touch.
That's so great.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It was a great adventure.
And then when you graduated, where did you go?
Well, I started out in junior college because that's all I could afford. And I had to get jobs, so I worked in liquor stores and things like that. And just after the Navy and before college, in order to make some savings, I worked for General Motors Acceptance Corporation, and my job was collecting bills and repossessing cars. And that was kind of an interesting year. And then I started college and then worked at various jobs. Finally ended up in La Puente, California, working on a horse ranch, where I fed the horses, cleaned the stalls, and rode between 10 and 15 horses every Saturday to keep them saddle broken. And then went to school and then worked in the evenings in a liquor store. So I was a busy guy for a few years.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, for most of your life, really.
Right. Well, then after that, I matriculated into Claremont McKenna College, it's called now. It's called Claremont McKenna Men's College in my day.
Uh-huh.
And then from there, I was accepted and went to the Harvard Business School and got a master's degree.
Harvard Business School and got a master's degree.
And that's what the book's about.
Yes, yes.
It's about starting in 1932, born in a coal mining town, and eventually getting to Harvard.
Love that. And tell us why, because you thought about a book, thought about writing, but why did you write the book after your daughter talked to you?
Yeah, well, my daughter was the one. We went back to my hometown. She'd never been there. Went back there for a funeral. And I took her all around where I lived. I lived in 11 different places in the 20 years I lived there before I hitchhiked out of town. And every time I went to a new place, she said, well, why did you live here? And then I took her to the school I went to and so forth. And she kept saying, well, how the hell did you ever get out of this place?
Yes.
So I told her. And she said, Dad, you got to write this.
Yeah, so true. Thank God she told you that, and thank God you did.
Well, I didn't start it for 20 years.
I know. I remember that chapter.
And she beat up on me for 20 years,
Yes.
she and her siblings.
Mm-hmm.
I have 4 children, and all 4 of them constantly reminded me, you promised you'd write that book, Dad.
Yeah.
And a promise was made in 1986, probably, 1987. And it took me until 4.5 years ago to begin.
Yeah, and you, so, I'm getting the high sign. So, so you, tell me all the hats that you wore, all the ones that you're grape farmer.
Oh, you mean after college?
After college.
After college.
Yeah.
After Harvard, I went to work as an investment banker in the brokerage business for a company called E.F. Hutton, which the old commercial, you know, everybody stops when E.F. Hutton speaks. And I eventually left there, started my own investment banking firm, but kept a great relationship with E.F. Hutton, and they asked me to do various things, among which was start, I mentioned the biotech companies, you did, 2 of them, which they financed, but I ran. And then finally we decided to do a grape farming company because the executives at E.F. Hutton wanted to have wine grapes for tax reasons. And so I started that in 1972. And I'm still chugging away with it.
And that wine is so good.
Well, thank you. Thank you. It wins lots of awards.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you're getting amazing reviews on this book. 5-star reviews.
Yeah, Amazon's had a lot of them.
Age 22 to 80. I know we're over, but we'll have to work it out somehow. Because I have to read my favorite part of the book, or I should say one of my favorite parts of the book, because there are so many. And it's this dedication page. To my wife, Shirley, who without complaint put up with a husband tied to a computer for too many months, and then had the patience to proofread the work. I will be eternally grateful for her loving support. And here she is. That, to me, was absolutely spectacular. If you could do it all over again, is there anything that you would still like to do that you haven't done?
I think I'd travel more. I don't think I traveled enough. If I had my life to live over, I would spend much more time traveling. And I would not have played football in high school and messed up my knees,
Oh, yeah.
which I did. And just about that, that's about all. I made my share of mistakes. And I'd probably make them all over again.
I love that. And you play as much golf?
I'm not playing these days, but I used to play a lot of golf.
Then, yeah.
Yeah, for many years.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, listen, I know how busy you are. We've tried to make this happen for a long time. I'm just thrilled that you're here and that you could talk about the book. And it's amazing. Breaking Out of Beerport. What was the first title?
My working title?
Yeah.
Working title is Life is Just an Adventure.
Yeah.
Which it really is.
I agree with that. You're amazing.
Thank you.
And we will go now to Father Howard Lincoln. Father Lincoln?
Everyone likes, even if just occasionally, to be told that you're doing a good job. Some words of affirmation, some words of appreciation, or some recognition, maybe just a pat on the back. There is a story about a missionary, and he was returning to California after 30 years of serving very, very poor people in a very, very poor country. On board his airplane back home here to California, there was a rock star. And when the rock star got off the plane, there was this huge crowd of fans waiting to applaud him, to cheer the rock star. The missionary, well, he was ignored, and he thought, perhaps with just a little jealousy, of Psalm 112, and that psalm says, "The worthless are prized highly by the sons of men." And I don't think the rock star was worthless, but I can guess I see the missionary's point. And after he got off the plane, he looked to heaven and he said, "Lord, all these years I've labored for you, and yet this rock star arrives and there's a big crowd to greet him, but there's no one here for me when I return home." And then inside of him he heard a little voice, and the little voice whispered, "My son, you are not home yet." Sometimes it's important, particularly when things are going kind of bad, to remember that our real home is in heaven. When there, that is all the recognition we will ever need.
Thank you, Father Lincoln. Father Howard Lincoln, Sacred Heart Church. Thanks so much for being with us. See you next time. And we're going to go now and have some of Al Scheid's wine. See you soon.